Hello guys, so in this video I will explain the difference between Docker and virtual machines, and also the difference between a Docker image and a Docker container, and um, what are the benefits of using Docker. Now I'll start with the evolution here of development. Initially, like, developers had to, they have some files, they do some development, they have some files, they have to send it to a different department. Now the next department would take these files, right, and load it into a machine that they will run some operations on. But then they have to add all the, like, the configuration files. There'll be some notes to tell you, okay, you need to add some dependencies. So you would download it onto the machine and you would, get everything running. Now, so this scenario, let us say your machine is acting up, or you can't get a right version of a file. You can cause some kind of discrepancy in your whole setup. Now, what the idea of containers or Docker image achieve is that you don't need to go and get all these dependencies anymore, right? You have a scenario like, you develop everything, and you have an image form. Everything is in here, all your file dependencies and everything. You send it to the next department. They just have to run uh this file that you're sending them. All right, so in that case, there is no room for variations in what you're adding, what file you're adding, and what version you're adding. So you work within a Docker container. So so basically, what is a Docker container is that you're given the Docker image, right? When you load this image onto your computer and it starts to run, it creates an environment, and that is called the Docker container. It's like, you're in an isolated state here, or a unique state where you have everything running. You have an independent environment. So that is the difference between Docker image and a Docker container, is that when you load the image, you start running it, you have created a Docker container. All right, now I will move on to both Docker and virtual machines, right? They do the same thing. It's about they are virtualizing tools. But what are the difference between them? Now, in uh, in in Docker system, so we can say in any operating system, right? You have two layers, right? You have the kernel, the OS layer here. So let's say this is layer 1 and layer 2, right? So this forms the operating system, right? And this is your hardware. Now, in virtual machines, you have to load the application plus the kernel, right? Whereas in Docker systems, you're just changing the application. You are going to utilize the kernel of the machine, right? You're not adding a new kernel. So this makes Docker files smaller files, right? So these are smaller files. These are in a virtual machine system. you will have larger files because you have to send a lot more stuff. So the smaller files, this would take off faster. You can start working faster here. And virtual machines, it's long file. You take a long time to boot your configuration, get everything going. Now, one of the problems with Docker systems, supposing you are on a Windows machine and you have a file, an application that needs to run on Linux. Now you would have a problem here because you would might have compatibility issue in utilizing the kernel on this Windows machine, right? Trying to run application that needs Linux kernel, right? Whereas a virtual machine, because of the fact that you are loading the kernel, so you do not need the kernel of the machine, the host machine. So it's gonna run. You won't have a problem here, but you would have a problem over here. Now, this is just a brief idea about you know Docker and virtual machines, and what are some of the basic differences. So I will stop here for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. Bye for now.